Hey everybody, this is Ian Shell. I am the author and the narrator of this series, Hyper-Borea. Thanks for listening, everybody, and I just wanted to say that the comment section is open, so I would love to receive feedback on this series. Please comment your likes, dislikes, comments, or compliments, criticisms. If you have any questions, that would be awesome. The like button above, you can also hit that, and that will enable more people to see the series promoted on YouTube. But you can also share the URL with anybody that you know, whether it be just messaging friends or sharing it on your timeline. In the description are a lot of helpful links. We've got my blog, which I'm posting the book for free, chapter by chapter, just as I'm doing here on YouTube. You can follow along as the release comes week by week, or the Amazon link is there too. If you want to buy the book, whether digitally or a physical copy, you can do that as well. It's way cheaper to do it digitally, so I encourage that. And finally, my Twitter's on there. If you want to communicate with me on there or engage with me on there, that's open to you as well. I really appreciate you guys, and I look forward to reading your comments. Chapter 6. Coincidence or destiny? I had no answer. My eyes opened, my heart quickened. Gilruel was here. She had spoken to me through the dreamscape. Her aged and weather-battered face, twisted tree-root nose, her unshapely body, it was all real and here. She had followed me along the path of Rensharo, my task now all the more complicated. I did not move from my position on the couch. It was dark outside still, and there was not a stir from the other inhabitants of the house. The blankets I was provided kept my body warm and snug. I was safe here, comforted by their weight, and the wards around the house. My thoughts fell to my assets. My ingredients bag was fit to burst. The superior quality of materials in this society would serve to amplify my abilities. The water was pure, the animals healthy, the soil fresh. I had 2 loyal serfs under my command, enough to move with precision and undetected by local authorities, especially necessary given the extreme ballistic capabilities of modern armies. Another benefit to not maintaining a mass of mindless servants was that young Saman and his sister Silver knew the laws and customs, the technology. Gilruel would most likely siphon the memories of some of her victims, but she would not understand, as one does, when they were raised under the circumstances that she only witnesses. How lucky I was to bump into young Saman when I did. Coincidence? I had always taken apprentices under my wing. It was a prestigious internship, given my station. The students of the Lord Arcanist. I was slotted for 3 with college funding to carry out educational activities, but was only ever able to manage 2, and that was while applications were still flowing. It happened first with Colrid, Dreamspear, literally, the 5th son of the largest miller in Alfheim. He was among 2 in the family with the capability to cast magic. He fell into my tutelage and found himself beside me when tensions escalated between rivaling kingdoms in the south. I was there to converse with the court historian and search their library on a quest for an artifact. Colrid was killed when an assassin mistook him for a prince, given we were bunked with the local regent. He was the first apprentice I took after my ascension, and he started a cursed line. I blame myself for his death. I knew the risks of accepting lodging in the castle during strife, but I was simply too lazy to stay elsewhere and commute to the fortress to continue my daily work in the library. Fitta, Rainfox, was a seeress. She was a beautiful girl and a budding shaman. Skjolund is the home island of Alfheim's largest port. It is an island shaped like a crescent moon, severely industrialized but for a swath of forest on the northern edge reserved for the college's uses. Skjolund was home to the various guilds associated with shipping. Sailors' Guild, Shipwrights' Guild, the Helmsmen, and the Tavern Masters' Guild. The latter chartered official taverns all over the world. If one had heard of a famous inn or drink in town, likely the owner was an Alfman, no matter how far removed you were from our home. Unofficial embassies they served as. The various guilds were protective of their business, private places, but Skjolund's Sumnal campus, Sumnal meaning water distant, stayed far from those politics. Sumnal was a series of open-air buildings with tall, tunnel-like windowed hallways, leading to a central tower with a thick base. The tower, as it was called, rose above the trees, and the upper-classmen stationed there, as well as the professors, enjoyed commanding views of the sea beyond the canopy. Given the narrowing tip of the island, the water was relatively equidistant from the campus in any direction, and it was not uncommon to hold lectures on the beach. The fateful day was overcast. I was instructing Fitta on creating a bubble of air around oneself while underwater, if one wanted to keep dry while being fully submerged. It started off with the caster walking or running into the surf, the waves being pushed back as if a violent wind were before you. Like descending into a basement, the water level was soon above one's head, and an air bubble provided plenty of dry space. Manipulated correctly, and you could float through the water suspended in this bubble, or just run along the sea floor. I taught Fitta the words and monitored her progress, the ingredient for this spell being a bottle or flask of fresh air that would slowly transmute into the very water that surrounded you. She was doing well, monitoring her ingredient, only soaking herself a couple of times as she worked out the kinks of casting the spell.
Master Sovos,
Throon, a sage of histories, called to me in his elderly voice. He was visiting from the island of Corcel, Black Mountain, and hadn't seen me in some time. That was by design. The man spoke until he had worn out both of your ears, and then your grandmother's ears. I listened to him wax on about the peoples of some far-away land. All the while Fitta kept practicing. Throon stroked his long, white beard, pausing his tale to ask where I had had my robes tailored. "The tailoring guild," was my response. "The guild does all the robes of the Lord Arcanist." It was well known, and Throon had seen 3 Lord Arcanists at this point. The only reason I suffered his droning was because I was hatching a plan. I was seeking the establishment of a new campus among the rocky cliffs of Scroll, another island of Alfheim out west, within sight of the Riffian Mountains. It was there that I believed existed some ancient burial grounds. The chief rival in claiming this prospective territory was the Miners' Guild. I could use Master Throon and his history to sway Maralon, the king, in granting the title to me and the college. It was for this reason that I let down my guard with my apprentice, shrugging off my responsibility to protect her from herself in order to further my ambitions.
Yes, that reminds me. The clothing of a tribe in the desert mountains beyond the spice roads. They,"
he carried on, and I respectfully nodded and smiled. This man had more tenure with the college than I had years lived. All the while, Fitta struggled. She was deep now, deeper than I had instructed. Her vial ran out, but the water around her still thrashed about violently. Unbeknownst to her, she had conjured a whirlpool of sorts, and every time she tried to swim to freedom, she was towed back under. Breath running out, Fitta began to panic. Her heart pounded, her head lightened, her chest burned as her lungs screamed for air. She struggled against the whirlpool. All the while, I struggled to stay awake at the onslaught of Throon's lecture. Fitta was blinking now, eyes stinging from the salt water, her vision darkening at the corners, as her cells were poisoned by what this new world calls carbon dioxide. As her strength began to fail, the whirling water calmed, my student half floating, half swimming to the surface. She broke the water and gasped, breathing in. I turned, my look of boredom shifting to that of concern. I saw something in the water. Typically, a rare fish stalks the beaches of Alfheim, looking for salmon heading up rivers. The mungfish. It used razor fangs to rip into its prey and inject its venom. The bite of one mungfish was not enough to kill a human, especially not a Cirrus or Master, but this was not a mungfish I saw now. The predator will burrow into the sand near shore and lay its eggs, the baby mungfish possessing venom of extraordinary potency. It was a school, freshly hatched, disturbed from their nest by Fitta's whirlpool. She screamed as the little devils strafed her, rending her flesh and riddling her with incurable venom. After recovering her and expelling the vermin, Fitta died in my arms as Throon looked on. The incident secured his help with my scroll endeavor, as he felt terribly guilty. Seaman and Erin were next. Both of Seaman's parents were middle managers in the cooper industry, barrel makers. Erin's father had died in combat in a foreign land. His mother was a seeress who specialized in reading minds. We had taken a couple of griffins and flown in a wide arc around an up-and-coming kingdom not far south of our borders. It was an abandoned castle swallowed by a dark forest that we found ourselves next. I recall how the evening sun rays sliced through the clouds from our perspective on the balcony of one of the towers. Aesthetically, it was beautiful. The rays of light were a morale victory, as the skies had been foggy and humid mist had wetted us and our beasts to our core. The tower doors were sealed shut by a curse. A foul demon had been summoned to guard the scrolls within. It was rumored that these documents might lead to the discovery of something big, and they did. The recovered papers charted a path to the location of Zyrith in her iceberg. This was unknown to us at the time, however. All we knew was that the scrolls were valuable. The sun warming my back, I walked Aaron through the process of beating the magical lock. Hold the lantern steady. Empty the powder onto the light directly. My hand wrapped around his. I loosened my grip. Slowly, I whispered, and his hand opened as well. Colorful sand imbued with magic sprinkled onto the light, and a rainbow beam melted the powerful shield blocking the entrance. It was a day and a half into navigating the twisting halls. The demon, I would return later to kill him, named Drethi, which means Houndwing, was cunning. He expertly wove reality to create an illogical maze of the castle. It was only through embedding a breadcrumb trail of magic symbols, invisible to the unholy, and powerful wards that we beat him. Upon entry into the treasure room, I advanced on the scrolls, sitting in a shaft of dusty sunlight across a stone bridge. The ceiling was high and vaulted, the bridge spanning a chasm with no discernible bottom. I hurried across and was on the other side when I heard a terrible crack. The stone gave way, and Aaron and Seaman fell as the bridge crumbled. Seaman grabbed the edge. Aaron clung to his peer's ingredients bag. Unfortunately, the bag's strap tore, and Aaron plummeted down into the deep with it. Seaman, unable to pull himself up, and without his ingredients, was helpless. I turned to help him, but Drethi laughed. His voice echoed across the massive room. It was deep and raspy. It haunts me to this day. "Lord Arcanist, please help!" Seaman screamed.
Make your choice, Elfman.
The scrolls began to burn. At the corner, a small flame, then growing larger. I channeled my magic, putting off the flame. The demon was strong, however, and it took everything to preserve the documents. "Sovos!" Seaman cried. I couldn't see, but his fingers were slipping in sweat. His knuckles were white, his heart racing. I had to choose. Possibly the discovery of a new artifact from the gods, cementing my fame in Alfheim, or my student, the son of middle managers. "I'm sorry, Seaman. This is bigger than you or me. Bigger than both of us," I yelled. I heard the boy scream until his screams were just echoes off of the wall of the chasm. I was back in the far lands now, back in Phoenix. There was a knock at the door. The sun was out now. I had fallen back to sleep. I rose, slipped on my jeweled sandals, and unlatched, then opened the front door. Standing before me were old Seaman and Aaron. I held my breath. "Who are you?" one said. "I think we have the wrong house. Did Sean move?" said the other. The lads were not my old apprentices. The phantoms of my past evaporated. Standing before me was a runt of a man, white blonde hair and a pimply face. His associate was handsome, muscular, and tall in contrast. No, I am a friend of Sean as well. Please, come in." I stepped aside. "Don't be shy now, introduce yourselves," I ordered as they entered. The muscular one gave me a somewhat bewildered glance. He was cautious. The look was subtle. The smaller one opened his mouth without hesitation. "I'm Caleb. Are you Sean's mom's boyfriend or something?" "Kyle," said the other. "No, though from the photos I have viewed, his mother does seem to be quite the woman. I have not yet had the honor or privilege of coming into her acquaintance." "Yeah," Caleb smirked. "Neither have I." Kyle smacked Caleb in the back of the head, and Caleb cringed. "Sorry," he said. "What is the meaning of the joke? Tell me. I do not mean to be made a fool of," I partially asked, partially demanded. Both boys made eye contact before laughing raucously. It was then that Sean appeared at the summit of his staircase. "Ah, we overslept," he announced, his voice stressed. He ran back to his room, the thud of his heavy footfalls echoing down to our location. "Sylvia, wake up!" His yell was heard by us as well. After the scrambling noises of the man-boy were finished tearing apart his bedroom, he was down the stairs among us, a backpack half on his back and a toothbrush in his mouth. "What are you guys doing here?" Caleb held up a book. D&D, remember? "Oh, shoot," Sean cursed. "No, I forgot. Sorry, things have been crazy." "Right, so I'll just leave then." Caleb turned on his heels. "See you later, my lord," he nodded to me and mumbled. "Caleb, shut up." Sean, without regards to my feelings on the topic, set his things down on my place of sleep. Then he appealed to me. "Can we tell them?" "I leave that decision in your hands. This would take responsibility from me and make me appear less manipulative. Of course I knew that once these lads were let in on Sean's new secret, they would not be able to resist joining us. It was a scenario that had unfolded in my life and the quests I've been on many, many times. These young men yearned for adventure. Their electronic video games unable to satisfy a primal itch to explore and conquer, just as many farmhands and stable boys had left their lives in pursuit of a greater purpose at the benefit of my quests. These lads would come easier, subdued by their robust civilization, affording them plush lifestyles. They would jump to serve me, and I would scratch their itch." "Why does he talk like that?" Kyle asked. I think you guys should take a seat," Sean ordered, turning out to be quite the leader of this little gaggle. Sylvia was coming down the stairs, but sat on a step to observe, while Kyle and Caleb rose and rested their bottoms on my blanket. "Okay," Sean gulped. "Lift me." I pulled from my pocket a lava rock, and it winked from existence as I brought my elbows in and turned my palms skyward. My fingers manipulated unseen energy that I used to carry young Saman into levitation. I wheeled him around above the furniture, then expertly landed him next to his friends. How did you just do that?" Kyle's eyes were wide open. Caleb was blinking, the runt of a boy speechless for what must have been the first time ever. "Gentlemen, I am Grandmaster Sovos, Lord Arcanist of Alfheim. It is a pleasure to meet you." I gave my full title, now that it had context. Well, that explains the sandals," Caleb laughed, then apologized quietly. "Sorry, don't fly me into the ceiling fan, please." "Sean, would these strong men be interested in supporting our quest?" I stressed mutual ownership of the mission as a way to keep the loyalty of those already committed. Yeah, we are." Caleb was up then and pacing. "This is so crazy." "Wait," Kyle spoke then. "What quest?" "What else can you do?" Caleb spoke excitedly. "This is just like Skyrim. Isn't the Archmage guy from the college? Doesn't he have the same name? Am I dreaming?" "Sedona. He wants to go to Sedona to find a magical artifact to save his world. He's been training us." Sean pointed over his shoulder at Sylvia. "In combat." He crossed his arms, a smug grin on his face. "Oh, I am so down." Caleb was still pacing. "Insane! Insane! Can we be trained?" "We could take my dad's Suburban. That would help with off-road stuff," Kyle said then. "But he gets back tomorrow from work." I would later come to find out that Kyle's father worked for the Firemen's Guild. They often held him for 2-day periods in a place called a firehouse. Interesting how a society devoid of magic organizes itself. In Alfheim, at the occurrence of a fire, a master casually saunters over and channels a wave of water into the inferno. If not for a master, the people would pump buckets full of water and assemble a line of workers. In this city, it was a job to wait around for something to catch light, speed there, and then blast it with a high-powered hose. "Tomorrow, then?" I asked coolly. I was disappointed, an ounce of anxiety welling in my heart. I was short on time, and there was no predicting what challenges I would face in a land of red stone. My attitude was only tempered by the opportunity to explore this great city in the meantime, and sharpen the skills of my subordinates. "Tomorrow. This time, on time. 5 in the morning," Sean echoed. "Dawn," I stated boldly. While Sean filled the lads in on my background some more, I made my way to the kitchen room, seeking something to fill my stomach and quiet the growling. Sylvia prepared for me a bowl of cereal, which tasted like grain covered in a thick layer of sugar. It was amazing that she was not tremendous like her countrymen. It was then I noticed a catalogue of the kind I used to casually flip through when visiting shops in Alfheim. These catalogues typically contain a small drawing of an item, its description, and the price to order or procure it. This catalogue in my hand now was for a company called Target, with a red Target logo to match. I saw various home furnishings, snack foods, alcohol, and glass screens. Then I saw it. Magic Clean makes messes disappear. A vial of green liquid was drawn with extreme accuracy. Need to do some shopping? Sylvia was looking at my grinning face. I hid the catalog. Shopping? No, I just like the pictures. Sylvia blew air out of her nose and rolled her eyes. Sean! The talking in the next room ceased as I called out. I'm going to exercise my wings a little. Okay, Sean returned my call. Then I heard an animated, just like in Skyrim, from Caleb, as Sean made flame noises with his mouth. I finished my breakfast and stepped into the yard, plucking a dove feather from my bag and flying into the air as a bird. It was a sunny day, as was every day I had been present here. There was a slight breeze, and an occasional gust that knocked my small bird body around the sky. My little wings persisted, and I made for where I had seen the big red target before. The great rectangular building with the grand space for cars was situated in close proximity to Goodwill. Not having to deal with the restrictive roadways and intersection lights, I was closing in quickly on my destination. I stole a glance out to the horizon. The city in her bowl of mountains had a tan cloud of what I assumed to be dust hanging overhead. It was a magnificent sight to behold, man-made structures stretching from horizon to horizon, almost overwhelming. The streets were laid out straight, like grid lines on a map. There were plenty of low trees, as well as naked wooden or metallic posts with lines strung between them. Seaman had warned me on hearing of my first flight not to touch those lines, as strong currents of what he called electricity acted as stored lightning to ignite and power the many machines of this world. I recalled then the city of Yig, on the island of Yig. This was the capital of Alfheim, and she was beautiful in another way. Where these power lines stood, in Yig, there were aqueducts carrying water from Grimnar, the highest mountain on the island, and in all of Alfheim. The aqueducts ensured some form of running water in almost every household, regardless of wealth. Obviously, the richer the Alfman, the more he had access to. In wealthier homes, you would find private baths, sinks, and toilets. The poorer one was, the less plumbing available. But even the paupers possessed a hole with which their excrement would fall off and be carried into the ocean. The island of Yig would be a swamp from the volcanic hot springs punctuated by various points on the map. However, hydromasters and geomasters engineered these hot springs into homes, in the cases of smaller ones, in public bathhouses in the case of larger pools. It provided for a relatively clean citizenry, but not nearly as clean as those in this land, with baths seeming to be viewed as a necessity rather than a luxury. My moment of pensive thought extinguished as I arced downward to the entrance of the store. I fluttered to the ground, and in the cover of a waste receptacle, I converted back to my regular form. A perplexed-looking gargantuan male seemed to be questioning his sanity on bearing witness to this action. I nodded to him. "A pleasant day for flight," I said, smiling and continuing into the establishment. The demographic driving business today was overwhelmingly young women of lighter skin complexion and hair color. They wore ghastly short shorts, a few modestly wearing dresses. Like Seaman's athletic shoes, many fat patrons wore what I saw on shelves and racks listed as active wear. I stifled my laughter. I walked down a few aisles and continued to be impressed by the goods available for purchase. This age was almost unbelievably rich in resources. As if to illustrate that this fact was lost on some, a child was screaming now, and I peeked around a rack of what was labeled Legos to observe. "I want it!" the child screamed, not more than 4 years of age, and pointing a chubby finger to a box with a small doll inside. "Too bad," his mother responded. The child, a scaled-down clone of the mother, undulated in rage. "Now! I want it now!" An ear-rending screech, like that of a harpy or banshee. The woman crossed her arms. I drifted from the scene. What diet the two must subsist upon to reach such rotund proportions? What would be the natural outcome of a lifespan of a child allowed to grow like a balloon? As I walked, it dawned on me that I would need direction in order to locate the potions section of this cavernous place. I approached the entrance and found several agents of the target, their shirts red, with an eyeball-like emblem staring at me as I approached. "Hi, welcome to Target. Need help finding anything, sir?" "Please, master is fine. I am not a sire." The pretty girl laughed, thinking my correction a joke. I seek your potions, specifically this disappearing concoction. I had the catalogue in my hand now, and pointed to the bottle of Magiclean. I was being studied by the eyes of the agent. She thought me foreign and strange. She bit her lip. Magiclean actually has a promotional table right there. She pointed to a cloth table with a carefully laid out spread. Many thanks. I bowed slightly and made for the table. The bottles numerous and bigger than I had suspected. I was imagining a vial the size of my hand at most. These were the size of my forearm. I read what must have been the price. $6. A disappearing potion of exact value with my jeweled slippers. Expensive. It must be a proven formula. I hefted one, and my fingers uncorked the beverage's plastic lid. A clever thought was working its way through my brain. Why not have a sip now and leave without paying? I smiled at my own deviousness. I was doing the store a favor, demonstrating an exploit that none had been so smart as to realize. I turned my eyes, searching for the target agents. Seeing none paying any attention to me, I raised the bottle and drank deep. The taste was caustic, a sign of a good brew. I licked my lips clean, lowering the vessel, and looked to my skin. Nothing happened. Well, that explains the size of the bottle. It isn't a very concentrated concoction. I sipped long and deep again, my throat protesting as the perfumed liquid snaked down into my gullet. I halted about halfway through and looked down at my skin after a long belch. Still, nothing. Drat, I would have to pay for the product. I turned with my half-full bottle and approached the agent at her till of finer quality than those at Goodwill. Will that be all for you? Oh, sir, we can get you a full bottle. She noticed the one in my possession lacked contents. No, really, it's fine. It is an inert beverage of... I paused, my stomach violently protesting in that moment. It was as if a percussion band were having a brawl among my bowels. I attempted to continue, but instead heaved the contents of my stomach onto the mechanical device in front of me, the splatter painting the red garb of the agent, and her face twisting in shock and horror. There was silence then, the sound of dripping vomitus and gasping, the only noise finding my ears. I spotted chunks of cereal in my green bile-like discharge. I gulped and finished my statement. An inert beverage of low-quality flavor profile. I grabbed the edge of the counter, again, as my knees weakened, and my organs flopped back and forth. The remainder of my stomach juices were expelled from my mouth and onto the girl. It was after this incident that I was formally instructed not to return to a Target store, and that I was now listed as banned. After walking through the parking lot until I felt better, I flew back to the home of Seaman, where I was eagerly greeted by 4 pupils, ready to begin the day's training. I was grateful I had not spoiled my clothing with my earlier activity, none asking about my half-empty bottle of Magiclean I had left on the kitchen table. Given I now had 4 pupils, I crafted 2 more practice swords and started them on sparring. Very much a tactile learner, it was how I instructed as well. The 5 of us drilled all day, Sean giving the final word that we should all turn in for the night in order to properly rest for an early morning trek. It was before the group split that I took from my bag some stones I had acquired that contained trace metals. From them I forged the hilts of 4 swords. My students were in awe, curious what I would do next. These, I handed them out, are small, concealable, could fit in your pocket. However, I retained Sean's, and swung it outward and away from the party. There were gasps of excitement as a blade extended to the length of 2 of my forearms. They become a worthy weapon when wielded carefully and well. I dismissed my subordinates then with looks of glee and excitement in their eyes. They're sharp, I reminded as they each swung their blades about. They then tested a few of the poses and maneuvers I had taught them. The 2 friends departed. Sylvia, Seaman, and I took our turns bathing away the sweat of the day before joining each other again in the kitchen with growling stomachs. Will Kyle make good on his promise? I asked Seaman over dinner. We were eating a delicious combination of cheese and meat that had been baked into a small loaf of bread. The recipe was referred to as a hot pocket. With a mouthful of food, he responded, I think so. His dad is usually pretty cool, but sometimes he could be strict about some things. He was raised super religious, so... His voice trailed off despite the ambiguity of his answer. What odds would you place our chances at? I asked. Like, what odds his dad lets us use the Suburban? Precisely. He chewed and swallowed. 80%? I nodded, finishing my hot pocket. Very good odds indeed. With a flick of the wrist, my plate rose from the table and drifted through the air to the sink where the knobs, sponges, and soap animated. The plate cleaned itself and was dried as I made my way for the staircase. I must research, and then I will take a walk, I called over my shoulder. I needed a way to turn that 80% chance into a 100% chance. There is a saying in the college, if I am meant to be anything, I will be prepared. I meant to exercise that expression. I sat before Simon's computing device, performing the steps to power it on and locate the internet browser, as Sean and Sylvia had instructed me. It was a wonderful website called Wikipedia that I discovered the predominant religion of the region was Christianity. I read the tales of Christ, his father, and their friend, the sacred phantom. An idea wormed its way into my mind. I was downstairs then, Sean washing his plate by hand. Might I have directions to Kyle's place of residence? He turned, bewildered. What? Why? You're not going to do anything, are you? I was put off by this response. What did he think I would dare to do? Come, don't be ridiculous. I simply want to learn. Your neighborhoods and villages within the city fascinate me. If I have time to burn, I'd like to burn it as a spectator of this fascinating world. Promise me you won't do something weird. Sean, whatever do you think I would do? Something weird. I gave him an innocent grin. My intentions are merely to observe, but if I must swear to something, I swear I will not enter Kyle's home. Okay, Sean blew air out of his nose. He's not far. He removed the glass device from his pocket and was showing me a map then. Jack Callahan ran the back of his fingers against his cheek, feeling the bristle of his budding beard. He massaged his legs, which had been sitting static for 6 hours at this point in the night. Sweat trickled down his neck. He was not wanting to attract attention by leaving the surveillance van running, even if that meant no air conditioning in Phoenix. He glanced down at his watch, a G-Shock GST in stainless steel, the analog hands indicating it was some time after 10. The timepiece was made by Casio. It boasted the ultra-accuracy of atomic time. It was solar-powered, water-resistant, and damn near indestructible. Jack's wife had picked it out for him. He used to think of the watch as a metaphor for himself. He had always taken pride in his accuracy at work. His energy levels in the field couldn't be matched, and he felt indestructible until his last assignment. Jack's hand naturally found the spot on his ribs, where he had been shot. He had recovered since then, many surgeries later, but the scar was a reminder that he needed to humble himself. You're not the young rock star you once were, Jack, Agent Callahan smirked, running a hand through his hair to slick it back out of his face. There was a light tapping on the back door of the van, the indicator that a friendly was about to get in and not to shoot. Smells like crap in here. It was Doug Donahue, Jack's partner. 2 waters, ice cold. He took a seat next to Jack, facing out a heavily tinted window on the sides of the van. Within, they had 2 cameras set up, one for still photos with a telephoto zoom lens, and another continuously recording video. Each device had black tape over its lights, the screens covered it with black cloth. They had taped black trash bags between the front cab and the rear of the van too, as well as on the back windows. Anything going on? Nothing. Jack motioned to the windows on the left side of the house, farthest from the garage. Pulled up in a Suburban like you saw. They had dinner, I'm guessing, then they went to bed. They're sacked out. The reason these 2 men were stepped into a metal box was to clear the name, hopefully, of a local firefighter. A station recruit was outed as a member of the CDS, Cartel de Sinaloa. He had worked his way into the fire service with the help of some of the local gangs. That's where Jack and Doug came in. They were members of the Phoenix branch of the FBI's gang task force. Not a lot was known about the cartel's intentions. Less was known about how the gangs benefited. That's why the 2 agents found themselves stuck in a good old-fashioned stakeout. Jack accepted one of the water bottles Doug had just retrieved and placed it on his forehead. It was ice cold. He dared not drink it. He had already filled a few pee bottles after a couple of coffees. Doug was a big guy, a football player in college. The extra body only made the sauna-like atmosphere in the van worse. He's clean as my bet. I'd say. He trained the guy, however. Maybe we're wrong. They would repeat hypotheses back and forth all night, and they would be back tomorrow night to do the same. If the FBI was anything, it was thorough. Heads up, who's this? Jack was bewildered. As if out of nowhere, a man with brown hair down to his shoulders was standing in front of the house. His back to them, he seemed to be wearing a collared shirt, light brown pants, and... Zoom in on the shoes. Jack was the senior partner, but that didn't matter. He was naturally the leader of the 2. Where do you come from? Profile match any KAs? Doug aimed the telescopic lens towards the man's sandals. They huddled around the small screen, the light from the street lamps glistening off of what looked to be rhinestones. Maybe a clean transient? I transformed into my native shape, standing now before the home of Kyle and his family. From my position by the road, I confirmed the house number was correct, as Seaman had recalled to me. I remembered my promise to the man-boy. I would not enter the home. I spotted a window with its curtains closed, to my right, but to my left was a more promising venture. I did not want to use mind control, but if I needed to, I would. I had contemplated a circumstance in which I would need to use the body of Kyle to wake his father and bring him to me for convincing. It was important that Kyle did not remember anything that was to happen as well, for young Seaman would never cease in his verbal retribution against me. I made for the window with the blinds undrawn, and stood before the window, peering in. I saw a bed, a large one, 2 inhabitants. I recognized one as a woman, her petite shape not occupying much of the blanketed space. A burly man of some size took up the next space next to her. What luck this was! I reached my hand into my bag, fingering the right ingredient. I mumbled to myself, and ensured that the mother of Kyle would not wake. Then I took on the form I would need for my next set of theatrics. Get the phone. We may have to call PD about a trespasser. Has to be homeless. Jack pointed to the bag they kept their cell phones in. Jesus, what is that light? Doug shielded his eyes as a bright white floodlight blinded them. I think you said it right, Doug. The light pierced the van, blowing out the sensitive lenses of the cameras. Through his fingers, Jack saw what appeared to be the Son of God in his most stereotypical image on the front lawn of their person of interest. White robes, sandals, flowing brown hair and beard. Kevin Hatherson, firefighter of 15 years, opened his window, mouth gaping, eyes wide. Jesus spoke then, his voice soft but carrying command. He addressed Mr. Hatherson. My child, you are being called on to fulfill a mission from God. Yes, Lord. Anything. The muscular firefighter's face was illuminated, tears rolling into his mustache. I can't get a picture. It's too bright. Jack wrestled with the settings on the camera. Video camera's toast, Doug responded. Come morning, you will give your son permission to take any vehicle he pleases on a trip with his friends. You will also give him a generous amount of money for his food and gas. A look of confusion crossed Mr. Hatherson's face, but it went away as quickly as it had come. Yes, my lord, anything for you. Return to sleep now, and remember my words. Amen. Jesus clasped his hands and bowed his head, then disappeared. Speechless, the 2 FBI agents watched as a weeping Kevin Hatherson returned to his bed. They sat there in silence, eyes adjusting to the darkness. Again. Jack finally spoke. What the hell was that?